So I want to welcome you all to Montreal for what is going to be a really exciting conference, and it's such a pleasure to see everybody here. I have learned that you're all bigger than you look on Zoom. I didn't realize that. So we're just very excited. I want to start with a land acknowledgement. We're very thankful to host this event in Montreal. Jojage is called by those in the Haudenosaunee language. This is the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, the Mohawk, the people of the Flint, who are part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the people of the Longhouse. And we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people that call this land home. Now, on a personal note, I'm going to be giving some tours of Old Montreal in the next few days for those who want to go on a tour. And I've been preparing these tours, reading books about the archaeology and the architecture. And I use books from 30 years ago who say the history of Montreal starts in 1615 with the arrival of Champlain setting down his flag. And these are old books I'm reading that start 400 years ago with the history. One thing we have learned now is that the history of this area goes back 4,500 years, 10 times as long. And recent archaeological diggings in this area have found physical evidence of settlement by people whose names we don't know. We don't know what they call themselves. Later on, they're called the St. Lawrence Iroquois, and then people of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And I encourage you to try and go down to the Pointe-à-Calière Museum if you get a chance, where the physical evidence of this, the use of this territory, people who lived here, who hunted, who fished, who traded, who met, who exchanged. We now have the physical evidence that shows this very long time habitation. So I think that that's really important for us all to see. So this land has long served as a site of meeting and exchange and trade among many First Nations, including the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Huron-Wendat, Abenaki, Anishinaabe, Algonquin, and Innu. And in your conference bags you received at the registration desk, you can find handmade soap from Sequoia, a business owned and operated by Indigenous women who live in the Kanawaki Reserve about 20 minutes away. So that's a nice thing for you to take home. So we have had an incredible 10 years of CCNA, and we couldn't have done it without our partners. And I'm not going to read all the partners on the slide, but those of you who are here representing partners, we're delighted to have you, and your support over the years has been amazing, incredible, and vital to what we have done. And I hope this is going to be a time to network with the scientific community as well over the next few days. We have a very exciting conference program with 2 sessions led by our Indigenous Cognitive Health Program, under Jen Walker, workshops and sessions from our cross-cutting programs, the KT, EPLED, and ELSI, 10 TikTok sessions with highlights of recent CCNA research teams, 2 poster sessions, partner booths, 2 excellent keynote talks, a talk from the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, an interactive art installation by our very own Ellen Snowball, a reception tomorrow night, and much, much more. Oh, they left off the tours. Okay. So we hope that you're going to learn something new and connect with new and old colleagues and friends and get inspired for the future. And now, speaking of the future, it is my great pleasure to invite Dr. Jane Rylett, Scientific Director of CIHR's Institute of Aging, to say a few words. And before you come up, I have to say that Jane reminds me that 10 years ago we met in her living room to talk about forming CCNA and how it could work. And Jane was the first one who enthusiastically took the lead of Theme 1, the basic science group, and has put in tremendous energy to get us to where we are today. Unfortunately, we lost her to CIHR at one point, but she's continued to be a great champion for dementia research and a great friend for the entire scientific community. And Jane, I salute you and thank you for your support and your work over the years towards dementia research. Please take the podium. And please give Jane a big round of applause.
Thanks so much, Howard. I still remember like it was yesterday, sitting in my living room and coming up with ideas for CCNA, probably a bit more than 10 years ago, but anyway, it's a while ago. Good morning. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today at the CCNA Partners Forum and Science Days. It's my privilege to be able to be here in my role as Scientific Director of the CHR Institute of Aging. We've been the funders, and we are the institute that oversees the CCNA. And it's been a real labor of love for me because, as Howard mentioned, I was at CCNA from the outset. Was the proud and honored leader of Theme 1 throughout Phase 1 and into Phase 2 until I was offered this position at CHR, and of course had to step away, but now I can be here in a different role. So CCNA is a wonderful example of the power of collaboration towards a shared objective. Since its establishment in 2014, CCNA has shaped the landscape on neurodegenerative research and aging within Canada and indeed around the world, and positioned Canada as a front runner in studies on brain aging. So I've got some slides here. I see, oh, there's the first one up, okay. So this slide looks like one that Howard just showed. So CCNA, as Howard mentioned, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. This is an absolute milestone and really has been made possible by the support of a large number of partners throughout the years. And you can see the partners that were there in Phase 1 and then many carrying on to Phase 2 and some new ones in Phase 2. And in Phase 3, we have a number of partners that will be joining. So we'll be able to construct a new slide shortly when we have all of that together. But we're absolutely grateful for all of the invaluable support that they've given and the contributions over time. So I'd like to congratulate CCNA on this significant milestone of a decade of CCNA research. So in 2014, we see Howard looking a little different, actually, at the ministerial announcement for the funding of Phase 1. With this, we witnessed the inauguration of the CCNA, and this was marked by an investment of about $26 million by CIHR and its partners. The initial phase brought together the best Canadian researchers in all aspects of neurodegenerative processes affecting cognition and aging. And this was, the goal here was that this be a real collaboration across the country and with enhanced synergies to foster innovative thinking. So as this transitioned to Phase 2 in 2019, so now a new 5-year phase of funding, CCNA refreshed its activities and the scope to represent and respond to both national and international priorities at that time, and the shift in the science at that time. So this then went to address emerging needs within this research field. And at that time, the total investment of CIHR and its partners was around $44 million, so a big increase, and you could see that from the number of partners that came in at that time. So during Phase 2 of CCNA, there was a rigorous international external review that took place, and you can see that on the slide around 2022. So the outcome of this was several, but also with a recommendation that there be strategic refinement and restructuring of CCNA. And the result then was a move towards funding an operations center for CCNA, and then the teams, which were part of the original CCNA, would be funded separately. So that's how we moved forward since 2022 to be able to try to restructure the operations center, and then the teams will be coming up in a little while. So this brings us to 2024 on the third phase of CCNA. So in this third phase of funding, the key components within the broader brain health and cognitive impairment and aging research initiative was formed. And this is a CHR major initiative overseen by the Institute of Aging. So you can see that down in the bottom of the slide. So the Brain Health and Cognitive Impairment and Aging Research Initiative at CHR has three basic components to it. And this really is an evolution of the dementia research strategy that was founded and formed in CHR in 2009. And so when this was formed, it was basically to support research around prevention, around diagnostics and treatment, around other neurodegenerative diseases in addition to Alzheimer's disease. And an important outcome of the dementia research strategy in 2014, of course, was the creation of CCNA. So in this slide, you can see CCNA, which is absolutely central within the Brain Health and Cognitive Impairment Research Initiative, not unlike it was in the Dementia Research Strategy, but now it's bolstered and complemented by other funding programs within CIHR, both strategic as well as open competitions that complement the research of CCNA. And these are there also to support the objectives of CCNA as well as the National Dementia Strategy. And then you'll see a third component, which is the Dementia Research and Innovation Funders Alliance. This is something absolutely new that we created and was launched in November of this past year. And this is a forum that brings together all or most of the funders for neurodegenerative disease and Alzheimer's disease, dementia research across the country. And last autumn, we brought together 22 funders and organizations from across the country to start to work together with common purpose to be able to identify needs and gaps and to be able to speak with more of a one voice, a single voice towards government and others to be able to identify what the needs are for future investments in research in this area. So that brings us to today. So CCNA next steps, and as Howard alluded to, we're very pleased to be able to announce today, informally, that the CCNA Operations Center has been funded. We congratulate you on an outstanding application that's been through peer review, and the Operations Center will begin funding April 1st of 2024, so just a few days away. So the Operations Center will continue to support CCNA research teams by providing leadership, administrative support, facilitating cross-cutting programs, and by offering the possibility to leverage the research platforms. So I invite you now to stay tuned for an announcement on the second stage of funding for CCNA Phase 3, and this will be the teams. So the teams, as I mentioned, are separate now. And so there will be a funding opportunity launched in the very near future around teams. We'll have a number of supports to webinars and other information sessions to support CCNA researchers and researchers beyond CCNA on the application process and what will be involved. So we really look forward to funding CCNA teams and bringing partners on board for that. So CHR and the CHR Institute of Aging is proud to continue to support work of the CCNA, and we're absolutely honored to be able to attend the CCNA Partners and Science Forum and wish you an absolutely wonderful conference.
Thank you, Jane. It's always nice to start out with some good news, and so there we are. We're going forward, and there's going to be a lot of discussion at this meeting about what going forward is going to mean, and certainly within the core, we will have the funding for the platforms, Compass, Can Thumbs Up, Brain Health Pro, the Loris Data Management System, the administration, and a new hub, which is going to, I'm calling it the DRESH, the Dementia Research Support Hubs, which will include KT, EPLED, training, Indigenous Cognitive Health Program, and the engagement of people with lived experience, all of the cross-cutting programs that we hope to make available for the greater community, the teams and individual scientists working on dementia across the country in the next few years. So it's going to be a different organization, more of a voluntary club rather than centralized financial control over the teams, but it's going to be exciting and a great opportunity. I want to take one moment before we go on, because sometimes people do this at the end of a meeting, but the end of the meeting, people are rushing for the doors sometimes. So I want to take a moment to thank some of the people who have been involved over the past few years. First, I do want to start by acknowledging the Associate Scientific Directors of CCNA, Natalie Phillips and Ken Rockwood. Where is Ken? There's Ken. Ken, will you please stand up, Natalie and Ken? Natalie and Ken have given tremendous support to leading this organization and helping me and reaching out to places I couldn't go to, and couldn't have done it without you. I'm very grateful for your involvement, and they're both very busy people, and they're always available to talk about important strategic issues. Sometimes Natalie would be out walking her dog, and she'd be on the phone with me and telling me what to do, so that's been great. I want to thank the members of the research executive who, again, no one gets paid for this, but they gave their time every 2 weeks to meet as a group and give advice and guide strategy. Can I ask all the people on the research executive just to stand up for a moment so we can give them a round of applause? And finally, I'm grateful for all of you who have led teams over the years, and the members and who have participated in EPLED and participated as the champions of teams and the champions for sex and gender and champions for raising knowledge of the research in the Indigenous community. But I do want to single out our administration. We've had a tremendous team, and you'll see, when a meeting works as all the meetings seem to, and the webinars work and things go smoothly, it's no accident. It's because we just have a phenomenal set of people behind the scenes. So Nathalie Belanger, Inbal Itzhak, where's Emma? There's Emma. Please stand up and take a bow. And who have I left off? And with that, it's my pleasure to invite Linda Skye Grossman, to represent the EPLED, the Engagement of People with Lived Experience program at CCNA. Linda is going to come up and talk for how long? The rest of the day? No, 10 minutes? And then there's going to be a really fantastic video from EPLED. So Linda, please come up and join us. Oh, okay. Give an extra step. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It seems as though Howard and Jane's mother fed them both better than my mother fed me, because I need a step. Thank you for that kind introduction, Dr. Churko. But with all due respect, you left out my title. Yes, I am a member of EPLED, but I have been given the distinguished title in that organization, that being, I am the Chief Officer of the important Department of Official Troublemaker. For those of you who don't know me or don't know about EPLID, EPLID is an advisory group in CCNA and stands for the engagement of people with lived experience of dementia. I am extremely honored to have been given the opportunity to speak at this conference. Although I am a member of EPLID, I must inform you that what I am about to say is a personal story. In that capacity, I am here to speak on behalf of my late husband, Dr. S. William Grossman, DDS. We called him Mickey. Mickey was a kind, clever, ingenuitive individual who treated his patients with dignity, understanding, and respect. When Mickey was first diagnosed with MCI, which quickly morphed into Alzheimer's disease, I found the diagnosis to be incomprehensible. Alzheimer's could not be happening to us. This was a disease that happened to others, certainly not to a bright man like Mickey. In an instant, it was briefly explained by the physician, who appeared to me to be a very businesslike, insensitive, and seemingly uncaring specialist, that I was immediately to become Mickey's uneducated, unprepared caregiver. Without a doubt, the diagnosis of this disease and the journey that followed changed the lives of my husband, myself, and our family dramatically for the remainder of our lives. The mistakes I made during this extended period of time were phenomenal and heart-rending. Even though you may be more educated than I have often found it to be both sad and unfortunate that unless you have walked in my husband's shoes, in my shoes, it can be difficult for you to comprehend the tragedies that are associated with this disease. Many of you here today are researchers, and although I am well aware of the extreme importance of research, I often wonder, as an individual, if you are able to see outside your test tubes, your mice on which you are experimenting, your words on multiple sheets of paper. I wonder how many of you have experienced inconceivable anxiety associated with the devastating situation of bringing your loved one who is suffering from dementia into the ER of a hospital, only to learn very quickly that basically you and the patient are non-entities, things, because most likely you or the patient are more senior, and there is nothing much that can be done for you. Often in this situation, with extreme expedience and little to no input from you, the caregiver, you are passed to the back of the line. As there seems to be, in some medical professionals' minds, many more important situations to be dealt with in the ER. In the end, Mickey died to what our family experienced to be a heartbreaking, traumatic disease for which there is no cure. I was devastated. I had lost my husband, my partner, the father of my children, and my best friend. During this time, there was little I was able to do to help alleviate the dreadful things that happened to Mickey as a result of my inabilities and the varied situations that are prevalent because of this disease. Our 3 daughters were crushed that they had lost their doting father, and unlike me, they are faced with additional questions. Are they as susceptible to a similar future as Mickey? Do they carry the gene that caused their father's death? Is Alzheimer's in their future? This, then, is an additional reason why I'm urging you to consider my words while doing your research and studies. At the moment, this disease does not affect just one person, but may continue on in families. Isn't this a frightening thought? Therefore, I am practically begging you to contemplate and understand the seriousness of this problem. Without a doubt, we, the people who face this dilemma on a daily basis, desperately need your help. Obviously, not everyone who participates in this diagnosis behaves the way I did. I became despondent and depressed, but perhaps due to my complicated experiences, I had the desire and the determination to contribute to helping others who may be undergoing what we as a family suffered, while continuing to learn about this all-encompassing disease. Fortunately, for me, after considerable investigation on my part, I was given the opportunity to become a part of EPLID, an organization that is partnered with CCNA. It was under the auspices of this group that I began to learn that I was not alone in my feelings of despair. I also learned that although I personally took this in a negative fashion, there are others in EPLID who taught me that with discussion and learning, many of the outcomes endured by the individuals in this group were blessed with positive attitudes. EPLID members are made up of people from all walks of life, various ages, different backgrounds, and have been involved in many life experiences. One of the things that has been invaluable to me as a member of this group is that our members have been able to divulge our problems and have been given the flexibility to discuss our concerns amongst ourselves while not being judged by others. On many occasions, we have been given the liberty to exchange thoughts with other groups from whom we have learned that although this disease may be prevalent amongst adults, to date, society has been slow to make visible changes in what I view as an unforgiving disease. Due to the many people I have met as a result of working in this group, I have been given the opportunity to speak out, as well as to speak with others who have been subjected to similar situations in which I was involved because of dementia. Moreover, because of EPLID, not only have we had the chance to teach, it has afforded me and others like me the possibility to begin to understand and to learn about the many complicated facts concerning the difficult choices that are often associated with this disease. Distinguished guests, perhaps you can look at the situation about which I speak in the following manner. Cancer is a disease that no one is giving up on. In fact, the understanding of the word cancer and the research on this subject is increasing year after year, obviously continuing to gain remarkable success. I personally view the lack of proper understanding for individuals suffering from some form of dementia as a type of cancer on seniors' lives, a cancer that needs a great deal more attention. Perhaps, logically speaking, a type of cancer that may, in time, might, unfortunately, impact your lives. I could go on and on about the many changes in Mickey's and my lives that caused us a great deal of consternation. But as my late mother, who was a wise woman, but to whom I must admit I didn't always listen, used to say, "Linda, don't complain unless you are willing to help change what you are complaining about." So with that in mind, and with the multiple stories I have to tell, I am looking forward to speaking with as many of you as possible during these next 3 days to discuss my plight with you, to learn from you, and ultimately to help make changes. I am anxious to hear what your plans are to help alleviate the tragic journey that I experienced with my husband. Although, as I explained to you at the outset, this is a personal story, Mickey's story, my story, please understand it is not a fairy tale. I want you to comprehend that the devastating experience we underwent became a daily part of both Mickey's and my life. What I really would like is for you to understand that although I do not have a PhD from a recognized university, I do have a PhD in this life-altering experience. Do you? If the answer to this question is no, then I am asking you to think carefully about what I have said. Use your considerable knowledge, talents, and abilities to help make life-altering changes to assist people like Mickey, people like me, people in Eppled. I can guarantee you unequivocally that you will be assisting humanity and you will not regret accepting this challenge. All that I have said is the reason why Eppled members are here today. We want to share with you the story of how we became an important part of this CCNA conference. We are here. Look for us, question us, and think about us going forward. Members of Eppled, please stand so that all present will know who to question during the coming days of this conference. On that note, we have prepared a video that you are about to watch. In this video, you will see the story of some of our members of Eppled and how the engagement of lived experience in CCNA's annual event has evolved over time. These are real people, people you would meet on the street, people you would meet at a baseball game, or perhaps at a conference such as this, but people who have exceptional stories to tell. So please, watch the video with a thought in mind that any one of these individuals could be you. Think, what would you do in their place? How would you handle the situations that they face every day? Then talk to us, engage us. We want you not only to hear us, but to listen to us. Honored guests, thank you very much for having the tenacity, the patience to listen to me and to what I recognize I have become, an official, dedicated troublemaker.
Hello, My name is Myrna Norman. I have frontal temporal dementia. In 2020, I joined the Engagement of People with Lived Experience of Dementia Advisory Group. EPLED is a group of passionate individuals living with dementia and their families and friends who work alongside researchers. Instead of being study subjects, EPLED members are meaningfully involved as co-collaborators in research. Our goal is to make research better by including the lived experience perspective. Today, I want to share with you the story of how EPLED became an integral part of the Canadian Consortium of Neurodegeneration in Aging Annual Partners Forum and Science Days. This is a scientific conference meant for scientists that did not used to include people with lived experience, but now it does.
If any of our EPLED members would like to ask a question, please raise your hand or please put it in the chat, and we really want to be sure to get those in there.
It takes me forever to figure out the right buttons. Mine isn't a question, but a thank you to all of you. What you're doing it brings me to tears because you guys have the opportunity to make life so much better for those of us with dementia. And you know what? So many of us want to help. We really, really want to help. So please keep us in mind and start, if you haven't, using those of us with dementia. Thank you. I've learned so much.
Okay, you're not the only one. Thank you, Myrna, for comments. You were so dignified in recognizing that you are living with dementia, and that you so value situations where you can contribute and you're made to feel like your contributions are important. So just to hear someone say that they were grateful for what we were doing, it moved me profoundly. I think we have a moral and an ethical obligation to include the voices of people living with dementia and their care partners, in order to have our research be collaborative.
3 years earlier, in 2020, this kind of interaction would have been highly unlikely.
To look back at 2020 and to see now how integrated EPLED is into so many aspects of CCNA, people are asking for their involvement and their contributions. Again, because there was a group of folks that were already doing this type of work, but there was a really large group that wasn't. And I think we needed to, move them along slowly and help them to be comfortable in, knowing what this is, knowing how it can be done, how it can be done well, not in a tokenistic way.
Whether it improves research or it doesn't, ultimately, it's a right. If we're going to be spending millions of dollars, public money on research on dementia, certainly the people impacted by the research should have a say, should have a voice, should have a look inside what this engine is all about.
In 2021, CCNA was much more intentional about the engagement of people with lived experience, and EPLED members were invited to the conference planning committee.
What would it be like to organize with other people coming from EPLED into this space where EPLED hadn't been before? Kind of almost like as a thermometer of what the culture shift would be needed in order for the researcher science community to move to a place where people with lived experience were valued as colleagues and contributors. And so I feel over our time together, I really did feel that shift.
The truth is, I had felt like a token in many other committees. And I got to the point where I wasn't willing to be a token anymore. So I have to tell you that attending the CCNA, they demonstrated that our words are valuable. EPLED knew we wanted to become more involved in CCNA's Partner Forum and Science Days, And in 2021, CCNA dedicated a session to EPLED and to their collaboration with researchers. However, in hindsight, we realized that this was mostly preaching to the choir. In other words, we were reaching the researchers who had already committed to working with lived experience partners.
I think one of the stigmas is, will I feel comfortable and safe enough to be offering my opinion in an environment where I may not have as much knowledge. But I quickly learned that we sometimes have more knowledge with the lived experience, and we quickly feel comfortable to say, no, I do have a lot to offer.
Engaging the choir rather than preaching to the choir, because we're interacting with the people that are involved in research. This is a growing relationship, and I think it's going to continue to improve. One of the things that I think we are, if you want to say preaching to people out there, is that we want to be engaged, and we can be engaged at many levels. One of the things I think as a positive of this is that I think people are seeing that opportunity to engage us much earlier.
In 2021, CCNA also introduced a panel about engagement in long-term care, featuring EPLED member Wayne Hickaway. Wayne contributed invaluable perspectives on long-term care and reflected on the impacts of incorporating lived experience voices on research panels.
Well, I found that in the cases of social isolation, people were not getting any exercise, were not going out making contact with other people. I was just recently at a presentation with a number of doctors and other professionals, and I sat there listening to this end of project conference, and they were all talking, and finally I just stood up and said, you know, with all due respect to all of you, you have no clue as to what you're talking about. You went there, you have no idea, unless you were in the situation, you cannot relate to it. You can think about what may have happened, you can try to relate, but unless you're there living it day to day, you don't see what's going on. You don't understand. But talk to people that have been there so they can tell you what it was like. So then you can get a better perspective. The more data you have, the better perspective.
Anytime I get to, hear from or interact with someone who's lived something that I'm researching, it really brings another layer. I definitely think that, having Wayne there in the session and having you there to share your story and experiences kind of brought that, aspect of human experience to the research story, which I think is really important.
In 2022, CCNA and EPLED deliberately shifted away from sessions that focused on EPLED exclusively. Instead, we chose to integrate people with lived experience of dementia in as many sessions as possible as part of this ever-expanding research community. This was a priority so much that we had lived experience partners as speakers in the two most attended sessions, the opening and closing sessions.
I find that researchers are different in meetings where they're talking to people who live in the real world, live with dementia in the family or in their loved ones. It sort of brings us down to earth and makes what are sometimes very technical or abstract or academic discussions become meaningful and high impact. Researchers come to me and just talk about how meaningful it's been, and sometimes it's the most meaningful aspect of the meeting to talk to people with lived experience.
The most surprising and rewarding component is when I have researchers seek me out afterwards and tell me how it's impacted them and how it will continue to impact how they think about the work they're doing, because now they can relate their work directly to an actual human being.
How did we do this before EPLED? We were missing an opportunity. So if you would have asked me in year one of CCNA, I would have thought that would be nice, but is it important? Now I do see it as important. I think it's had an impact, and we certainly want to keep doing it.
But think about how fortunate we are to have been involved with CCNA, that CCNA has taken the time to listen to us and to ask us what we would like to see happen in the future. So without CCNA, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to say all of these things that I'm saying now. And it's my sincere wish and hope that CCNA will continue to involve us so we do have the chance to explain our point of view.
In the regular research panels, we plan to incorporate the lived experience perspective in a speaker role or discussant role. In a session about the relationship between trauma and dementia, we had two speakers, a clinician researcher, Philippe Desmarais, and a person with lived experience, Karen Myers Barnett. Faye Forbes, a person living with dementia, posed questions to the panelists as an EPLED discussant. They each shared their own perspective on the impact of this collaboration.
And so this topic of research is really important because we need to do better by people who have suffered in our country and in our communities. There's a lot of trauma, and we really need to do what we can to support every and anybody, because the long-term cost is going to impact all of us.
It seems almost irresponsible to be doing research on a topic and not having engaged with anybody who's living with the disease or the illness.
Not often do we, as people with lived experience, get a chance to speak our minds to the researcher and ask them the blunt questions.
Right. And so as a woman of color, often folks who look like me aren't included in research.
I got to see that as a researcher, we're not just performing science, working on theory and numbers. We're tackling issues with real people and real needs.
The role of the EPLED discussant was perfectly illustrated in the sleep disturbances session, where EPLED members Emily McClellan and Christine Telker worked with trainee Nassim Montessori.
And are you looking at, as somebody who has a severe sleep apnea, that people could start being tested much younger?
This was the first time that I was presenting for my research for people with lived experience of dementia. And it was very awesome. My life and my world and environment is filled with computers, data as a data scientist. It was very interesting to actually introduce new technologies for sleep monitoring to people with lived experience of dementia. More than that, above that, listening to their concerns.
As our evaluation data demonstrates, EPLED has significantly contributed to CCNA, and we have become an integral part of its success. Through sharing our unique perspectives, CCNA Partners Forum and Science Days Conference continues to grow an enriched community. As the CCNA has continued to evolve alongside people with lived experience, close relationships have developed and special moments have happened. The one thing I have to put into what I'm saying now is hope. When we're diagnosed, we're not given even one tiny little bit of hope. Natalie, you and the people from CCNA give us that hope that we have to live well. I'm overcome that after 15 years of living with dementia, in the last 3 or 4 years, I found hope. And let's let people know that there is hope.
Hello, my name is Rosette Laughlin. I'm a member of EPLED as a person with lived experience of dementia. My mother Betty had Alzheimer's disease and passed from complications in 2020. Through that harrowing journey, I learned and amassed a lot of information and coping mechanisms and didn't want that to be wasted. EPLED gave my knowledge purpose, and the group has been everything to me. At EPLED, we will continue to push boundaries and challenge stigma around dementia. Our hardworking group demonstrates that not only can people with dementia collaborate in research, yes, it's possible, but that the close community we have built, one based on mutual respect, trust, and care, enables us to provide excellent quality engagement in research. Through our friendships, we have found the strength and support to share our unique perspectives, and this allows us to help to improve research. We hope that this video has provided you with some insight on how engagement can empower people living with dementia and make research better. If you would like more information on EPLED, please visit our website at www.epled.ca. Thank you for watching.
Hello, thank you so much for that video, for your words, for being here with us. I'm so grateful. Hello, my name is Jennifer Walker. I am Haudenosaunee, a member of the Six Nations of the Grand River. I'm also an associate professor at McMaster University and a member of CCNA. I've been a researcher with CCNA since the beginning of phase 1, before I even had an academic appointment. And in phase 2, I've been leading the Indigenous Cognitive Health Program and co-leading the Indigenous-led research team within the CCNA. It's my pleasure today to be introducing our opening keynote speaker, Dr. Ozioma Okonkwo. Dr. Okonkwo is a professor in the Department of Medicine at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. Dr. Okonkwo's research focuses on clarifying how alterations in the brain and other biomolecules place some cognitively normal individuals on a pernicious trajectory that culminates in a symptomatic Alzheimer's disease. In this context, Dr. Okonkwo is also interested in discovering new knowledge concerning the modulation of the link between brain changes and cognitive decline by both modifiable and non-modifiable factors. Overlaid on this research agenda are investigations of health inequities and how such inequities exacerbate or ameliorate the impact of biomarkers on clinical phenotypes. Dr. Okonkwo is passionate about mentoring emerging leaders in the field and co-directs the NIH-funded Health Equity Scholars Program. The keynote talk's title is the ADNI Diversity Task Force, a novel, culturally informed and community-engaged protocol for the inclusion of minoritized persons in Alzheimer's disease research. I'm going to invite you to come up and give your talk. After the talk, we will have some time for questions. When we open the floor for questions, we will invite our lived experience advisors from EPLED to ask the first question. Thank you so much, Dr. Okonkwo, for being here.
Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be in this beautiful city of Montreal. Thank you for the invitations, Dr. Itzhak. You've been a most tremendous, gracious host. I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you so much. And Dr. Chodkov, thanks again for having this session and putting this all together and leading this initiative for the past 10, 11 years. Congratulations to you on your next round of funding. That's impressive. Congratulations. So, I was invited here to give what was called the keynote lecture, but after watching that video that we just watched, I'm like, why isn't that the keynote lecture? That should be the keynote lecture. That was so very well done. Congratulations to EPLED and to the incredible work you and your group are doing to provide a much-needed voice in this space of dementia research. Thank you so much. Thank you. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit the time that we have on work that we've done over the last 4 years in the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative called ADNI. And the story of how I got involved in this project actually is a funny one, and I'll get to share it a little bit later. But it just goes to show for some of the trainees in the room here that you never really can tell where your career is going. Like the things that you start out to do end up not being what you end up doing, and life takes you on some pretty incredible journey that opens so many exciting doors to you. So I'm going to start from giving a land acknowledgement. So as you heard in my intro, I'm a professor of medicine at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. It's a beautiful city. But it's also built on ancestral Ho-Chunk land. And the Ho-Chunk Nation has called that land the Job since from the beginning of time. And in a very unfair treaty in 1832, they were forced to cede that land to what is now called Wisconsin. The University of Wisconsin-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the other 11 First Nations in Wisconsin, and it has made a commitment, like a literal commitment, to creating a better future together. As we all know, this session today is held here in Jojoge, Montreal, as is also called, the traditional territory of the Ganinjagahaga people, and this area has long served as a site for meeting and exchange for many First Nations living in this region. I'm humbled to be standing on their land, and we acknowledge them and offer them our deepest gratitude. So as Dr. Shortkoff said, a lot of times when you give talks or you're at a conference, you end up saving the thanks for the end of the conference or the talk when everybody has already tuned out or tuned off. So I also like to begin by thanking the individuals who helped make the ADNI Diversity Task Force the success that it became. The first kudos goes to Professor Mike Weiner, who is the PI for ADNI. He had the incredible vision in the midst of the pandemic, which again you will hear about later, to put together this task force to address a critical gap in the ADNI study. And this work would not have been possible, honestly, without my fearless and fearsome co-lead, Dr. Monica Rivera-Mains, whom, if any of you have met her, she is a force of nature, literally. And she and I worked extremely hard with all the folks that you see on there to launch the ADNI Diversity Task Force. At the end of the day, though, the work of the task force was carried out at the sites. So kudos goes to all the site PIs and their staff who came on board. What honestly was almost like a harebrained exercise in 2020, and said, yes, we are willing to partner with you to make this a success. So again, I want to acknowledge all of them and other folks whom time won't allow me to name here on that slide. So as many of us here know or have experienced, and as you heard in the video that we just watched, that Alzheimer's and other types of dementias is a public health crisis. And the crisis and the public health threat that Alzheimer's posed is even worsened in the context of individuals from minoritized backgrounds. In the US, that mostly refers to people who identify as Black or African American and Latino, Latina, or Latinx, who are, depending on what estimates you examine, between 1.5 to even 3 times at risk for Alzheimer's and other dementias compared to non-Hispanic whites. Now, what makes even this a more pressing problem is that these very individuals who are the most affected by dementia are also the less likely to be enrolled in studies of dementia. So imagine trying to understand a problem but not asking the person who might have the answer to the questions. And so this causes, sorry, wrong button. Here we go. Yes, thank you. So this kind of limits our abilities to actually understand why these health disparities in Alzheimer's exist. And more importantly then, whatever findings that we end up coming up with in most of our research studies are not eventually going to apply to individuals who probably need these results, outcomes, and cures the most. And nowhere has this become as very glaring as in the recent drug developments in Alzheimer's with aducanumab and lecanemab. And you find out that, even though these drugs have given hope that there might be eventually an actual cure for dementia and Alzheimer's on the horizon, but then when you look at the people who actually enrolled in these studies, they don't look like the people who are more likely to suffer from this disease. So there is that very glaring disconnect there. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be speaking to you about initiatives that were done in the ADNI studies. So ADNI stands for the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, and that is our fearless PI, Dr. Mike Weiner from UCSF in San Francisco. ADNI has had a long history. I actually first got introduced to ADNI as a grad student, and that was when ADNI had first started. I think that was about, when I first got involved was about midway through its first year of funding. I remember one of my mentors calling me one day over lunch and said, "Hey, do you know of this study called ADNI?" I'm like, what? ADNI what? No? He said, "Well, there is this study that has tons of data." Of course, anyone who knows me knows that data is like, what data? Please, data, yes. And the data is freely available to everyone. At that time, that was unheard of, that a study will collect data and make it available to anyone and everyone. And that was like a kid in the like really a kid in the candy store of data, And that was how I got involved in ADNI and published some of the papers that have continued to be highly cited. And some of those papers was actually what got me my postdoc at Hopkins. So ADNI has been a part of my professional career even before getting to this point where I now have a role in ADNI. But anyway, ADNI started about 20 years ago, and precisely at IC this year, there's going to actually be a full 20th year anniversary celebration of ADNI. So if any of you are coming to the conference in Philadelphia, I believe, please look us up. You'll be very welcome to attend that 20th anniversary celebration. So that is kind of the timeline of ADNI from its founding to current times almost. And the key goal of ADNI is to understand the evolution of biomarkers for Alzheimer's. When do they begin to get abnormal? What is the trajectory they follow? What are the ones that predict early and later risk of decline? And importantly, ADNI has served as a testing ground for the initial data that most clinical trials, the big ones, aducanumab, lecanemab, they began with ADNI as the data to model what it would look like to conduct the kind of studies that they eventually went to conduct. So ADNI has been pivotal and really changed the face of dementia research and Alzheimer's disease research. Now, with that said though, ADNI had a problem. And the problem is this. If you look at the number of individuals who are screened for ADNI, who come from either a Latino, a Black, or an Asian background, that is what you have there. So topmost being about 4 or so percentage in the study. If you look at those who actually go beyond being screened to being enrolled, that's about the same thing. However, when you take a look at the U.S. census about these individual members of these groups in the U.S., this is what you find. So you find that there is this big discrepancy in the representation of persons from Latino, Black, or Asian heritage in the U.S., and their inclusion in a study as pivotal of ADNI. And I want to say that this is not unique to ADNI. It indicates a bias that is very prevalent and inherent in pretty much all the studies that all of us sitting here do. And so this is what the problem was. And the solution as was presented on paper is what you see on the slide. But how this actually panned out was, I was sitting in my office, I think it was probably a Wednesday, and this email pops up, very short email. Hi, I'm Mike Weiner. Can I give you a call? That was all the email said, you know? I'm like, this has to be spam, you know? Why would Mike Weiner be emailing me and asking me if he can give me a call? Like, this was how all of this started. And, but obviously it wasn't spam, it was actually an email from Mike Weiner, because he then followed it up with a more longer email. And if you've ever worked with Mike Weiner, that is Mike Weiner. He shoots fast and straight, okay? And so I get on the phone with him, and without pulling and punches, he introduces himself and says, Adney has a problem, and I was told that you're the man to help us solve it. I'm like, wait, who? What problem? And anyway, he went on to kind of describe the efforts that had been made in the past in Adney to make Adney more inclusive and representative, and those had not been as successful, but that given the social and reckoning that was going on then, and also his vision for what Adney 4 would be, that he was recommitting effort and finances and resources to try again to make Adney more inclusive. And apparently he had asked around, and people said, if you want something like this to get done, here are a few folks that you can ask. And I was apparently on that list. Anyway, this was around May of 2020. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure all of us know what was going on in the world, right? And that was my first thought, was like, why is this some kind of trick? Like, you want to do something this bold and ambitious, and you want to do it in the midst of a global shutdown, and you're asking me to come lead it? Who put you up to this, Mike? But no, Mike was determined that the time is now to get this going. And so after a series of meetings, we kind of brought on my co-lead, Dr. Rivera Mains, and then we formed an initial small group of individuals to help us begin to think through what this would look like. And then in July, the official press release was put out that the Adney Diversity Task Force was being launched. And actually, I forgot to say this at the beginning. I want to give a shout out to one of the Adney site PIs, Dr. Sandra Black. I think I saw her. Hi, yes. Kudos to you. Yes. Yeah. Yes, okay. Anyway, so this was the official launch then of the Adney Diversity Task Force, and the mandate it had is, as you see on there, is truly to focus on increasing the rate of enrollment and retention of individuals from minoritized backgrounds into Adney. And again, the goal of all of this then is what you will see that eventually became Adney 4 study. So the core structure of the Diversity Task Force was as follows. We formed an initial team of 15 individuals who were going to kind of meet pretty much weekly to map out, what is it we are trying to accomplish? How can we get it done? Who are the other partners we need at this table to round up our skill set and make this happen? This was not going to be an Ozioma and Monica show, because it was way too big to just be done by just two individuals. So a team was important, and that was the first thing that we did. And then, in addition to that, then we also formed an external advisory board of really giants in the field. If you've worked in the field of recruitment science or health disparities in the US, these are individuals who are at the very top of the game. And we were so fortunate and thankful that they each said an enthusiastic yes, we would like to help you do this. And then, as I mentioned, the ultimate work was done by this, what we call our hub sites. And so what we did was that we looked at the history of Adney enrollment and recruitment and retention of individuals from minoritized background. We realized that just giving the complex situation that we were working in, that we needed individuals who already had a sense of buy-in into this mission. So we first of all picked sites that already had a track record of high enrollment and retention of Black and brown individuals into ADNI. But also we looked at sites that were in areas where they should be having similar types of successes but weren't, because we wanted to help them understand the kind of rich resource that they were sitting in and how to then harness it. So those were the two criteria we had: sites that already were doing well and sites that were in areas where they have access to these communities, but for some reason we're not making the outreach. So our goal then was to enable them, to equip them, to train them so that they can begin to have success as well. And then these are those sites. And if this was at an ADNI meeting, I would have each of them stand up and get an ovation, but this is not. So all you have is just the list of the sites that we worked with for this initiative. Now, one of the things that the Diversity Task Force leadership was adamant about is that we are not just going to tell people how to do this kind of work. We are going to demonstrate to them how it is done by how we do our own work. Traditional research, as most or all of us here do, is that we begin by asking, what can I, the researcher, get from the participants, from the patient? Is it your sample, your cognitive assessment, your genotype, your data, your this, your that? But that is not what community-engaged research looks like. You begin by asking, what can I give you? How can my coming into your community make a difference for you? And so in our work with the hub sites, we also adopted this approach. We begin by saying, here is what we as ADNI, as the Diversity Task Force, has to give you. Here is how we intend to support you in what we identify is a critical mission. And so here are some of the gifts that we gave them. First of all is money. And, people kind of sometimes shy away from money, but as you have heard, even from earlier this morning, funding is important for research, and particularly for the type of research you try to do in communities of color. A lot of folks, have an interest, or they will even say, yes, it is important for you to do this kind of work, but they believe that it can be done on a shoestring. This model here was meant to challenge and change that assumption, that the first thing is that you have to actually literally put your money where your mouth is. And so we gave each of these sites $150,000 each year they were part of this initiative, because we understand that it takes a lot of personnel and effort and time to make genuine, lasting connections in communities. You just don't show up on day one, ask for data, and take off. It takes time to build connections, networks, to even gain trust of the individuals before you then begin to talk about the data collection piece of things. And money would be critical for that. So that was why we made sure that this was going to be a well-funded initiative. And then we made ourselves available to meet with them at minimum every quarter. So this was like formalized that we are going to make ourselves available every quarter to meet with each of you. But again, I think I probably have this on subsequent bullets. This was just the formalized meeting. We also made ourselves available to meet them whenever, wherever they wanted our input, at any point, day or night. Oh, well, that was it, ad hoc. There you go. And then we also compiled a repository of resources, because again, nobody really is born knowing how to do this kind of work. It takes training, it takes support. And so we made all of this available to them in an easily accessible place that they can always reach out to, and dig up articles, PowerPoints, talking points, whatnot. Phone scripts, all of that. We made all of this available to each of these sites. And then a huge part of again, thinking that, remember that this was happening in the midst of a global shutdown. So a huge part of this initiative was a social media campaign, and I will speak more to that later on. And then, obviously, we all know the power of reinforcement, that any behavior that you reinforce tends to reoccur. So whenever ADNI publishes its quarterly and newsletters, we made sure to highlight one or more of our hub sites to show the work that they are doing and give them kudos, because this is hard work. And then we also held webinars, sometimes just for the hub sites, sometimes for all of ADNI, where we discuss, the work that the Diversity Task Force is doing and our successes, challenges, and pathways forward. And then we told them that, that depending on how things go, that they could also be eligible to get a second year of funding. So something to look forward to in the future to motivate their commitments. All right, so this is how we supported the sites directly. But we also know that behaviors do not happen in a vacuum. They happen in a context, right? And so we realized that, for the sites to ultimately be successful, there was also a need to change some things about the context in which this work was being done. So with the support of Mike and Weiner and the admin and clinical cores of ADNI, we made some changes to the ADNI protocol to support the work that the sites were going to be ultimately doing. The first is that, we made lumbar punctures optional, because that historically has always been a limiting barrier and factor to persons from minoritized communities to enroll in these types of studies. They just do not want to as easily consent, at least not as a first pass. By the time you have gained trust with them, most of them are willing to say yes, but not as a first ask, here, come and sign this paper, and give me your back. They're like, who are you? And then, we also made sure that that not only do we collect this data from the participants, but we also get to tell the participant, here is what this data tell us about you. Here is what your data look like. And at that point, we made the decision that we were going to begin to formally release amyloid PET results to these individuals. Because, what most people who enroll in this kind of studies ask is that, what is my risk for Alzheimer's? What is my children's risk? And so giving them a chance to see the PET results was something that we also did. And last but not least, again, this was happening in 2020 and 21. We created an avenue for as many of the ADNI assessments that can be done remotely to be done remotely. So these were things that we changed about ADNI itself to then support the work that the sites were going to do with the participants. But as we also know, there are no free lunches, right? And so there was also a get, what are we expecting from you as a site to contribute to ADNI as part of this initiative? So it was truly a partnership. And the first one was, for you to make a commitment that every year you are part of this task force as a hub site to commit to enrolling between 5 to 10 Black or Latinx folks into ADNI. Again, to take advantage of those quarterly sessions that we have set up to meet with you. And again, because that shows that you truly are committed to this initiative. And also, as part of that quarterly meetings, we send them ahead of time a survey to fill out to just kind of give us updates on how they are doing. So did they meet with any community-based organizations? Did they have any outreach events? Of which sort? A health fair, health screening, and where? In a church, a senior center and whatnot. And if they also did any of their own advertising. So this was just to enable us get a sense for how they were trying to implement some of the skills we were teaching them as part of being a hub site. That first bullet point there on enrolling 5 to 10 participants, I will tell you one of our success stories. So about I want to say a couple of months into this initiative, one of these sites reached out to Monica and myself, and they wanted to set up a Zoom call, which we happily did. And as soon as they came on the call, the lead and study and coordinator says, I'm sorry, but this is not possible. We can't do this. There's just no way. This is not happening. We call the participants, and they don't return our calls. We send flyers out, it's not coming back. This is just not possible. And then the PI chimes in to say, yeah, we thank you for reaching out to us, but we think that we are going to pull out of this initiative. So that was what they called us on this Zoom call to tell us. And Monica and I, to keep a long story short, we just kind of stepped back and said, tell us a little bit more, what are these challenges? And after they walked us through, the barriers that they have faced, and these are things that we know are very commonly experienced, because people are used to putting up a flyer and getting 50 phone calls, right? So that is what, if that is what your baseline is, then anything that is even any less than that is going to seem like insurmountable. So in a sense, we kind of walk them through, what it looks like doing the kind of work we are trying to coach them into doing, as opposed to traditional biomedical research. To cut a long story short, that site went from wanting to pull out of this study to being our highest enrolling site. And that was just one of our most hot and warming success stories for this initiative, that these skills can be learned even by people who think it is impossible, and that people can have great amount of success doing this kind of work. All right, so as I mentioned, given that this work was happening during COVID, we had to do it a little bit differently, and this involved a very massive and vigorous digital and social media campaign. And for this, we partnered with this agency called Alanis. It's a business owned by a Latino woman out in the Bay Area of California. And it basically had two kind of elements. So first of all was a massive Facebook ad and campaign that was put out to each of the areas where these 13 hub sites are located. The ad on the right with the multi-gen African-American family was a great hit across all of the hub sites. It was the Facebook ad that got the most attention and led to the most leads into enrollment across all of the hub sites, regardless of where it was advertised. But anyway, the one on the right is an example of a Latino-themed Facebook ad, and then on the left is obviously a Black African-American themed ad. So when people see this ad on the Facebook feed, if they click on that place that says learn more, it takes them to customized, tailored websites for each of the 13 ADNI sites. So each of the ADNI sites, hub sites, if they requested it, had both a Latinx themed landing page or website, and also a Black African-American themed websites, which are different from the standard ADNI websites. So this was customized for each of the sites. What you see here, I believe, is the ones for Duke, and you can see at the top there, it says ADNI and also says Duke, so that when these individuals from this minoritized background, say in the Durham, so Durham is where Duke is, when they come here, they know that I'm not just interacting with some website somewhere in ether, I'm interacting with Duke, a known entity in my community. So that was something else that we did to kind of build that initial trust for these individuals. And so then if they get to this point and they remain interested, they will tap that button that says count me in, and then go through some initial screening, and the process then continues. So I'm just going to share briefly the results from the initial phase of this experiment, really. So impressions is, ads agency, technical language for just viewing, like how many times were these ads seen, and you can see the numbers there. But then going from, the conversion from seeing the ad to actually clicking, there was clearly a funnel there that not everyone for whom this ad scrolled through their phone or computer or tablet actually went on to click it. And that was the conversion rate there. And then going from those who actually clicked it to then those who went on to the additional landing page to complete the pre-screening process was about 3,000, so about a tenth of those who clicked on the initial link. And then out of that number, then they broke down to those who went into the Black or African American themed landing pages, or those who went into the Latinx themed landing pages. And to summarize, then here is what happened across the 13 hub sites as a result of this initiative. That they went from an average, a monthly enrollment rate average of one person per month into their sites for ADNI to about 4 persons per month in the course of just one year. And actually, these results were tallied from I think May 21 to August or so of 22. The actual work done was between May of 21 to about February of 22. And then, overall, these sites went from about a 20% total enrollment rate into their studies of individuals from minoritized background to almost doubling that to almost a 50% enrollment rate. And in the course of the year in which these data were collected, about 95% of everyone who came into those sites for ADNI were persons from minoritized backgrounds. So, again, keep in mind that this was happening in the context of a global shutdown. And when we first started this, some people was like, this is not possible. And told Mike that Mike was actually on a wild goose chase to attempt to reach folks from Black and brown communities in the middle of a pandemic when everybody was scared to even talk to their cousins, right? And yet, this success was attained. So I'm going to summarize some of the lessons that we learned as a result of doing this. The first is that we found that it is very critical in an initiative of this sort to have individuals, in this case again, who are trying to reach Black and brown communities, to have those individuals be in leadership. It's probably stating the obvious that in many traditional settings, even when the leaders of the group identify an initiative like this as important, the individuals from those communities are brought in supporting roles. They are not really put forward to actually lead the initiative or to direct the pathways forward. So we found that this and having them in leadership was critical to the success of this initiative. And then we had, a community and scientific advisory board that really provided guidance to the work that we were doing. And I will speak more about this later on. As I mentioned, the digital campaign was not a one-size-fits-all. It was customized to each ADNI hub site, as also a way not only to show that this is a locally grown effort, but to build trust in the individuals from the Black and brown communities who were coming to interact with these websites. So it was important for this to be tailored. And obviously, the agency that we picked, Alanis, is an agency that has had a long track record of doing important work in communities of color. And so they already had a record for what it takes to make this kind of work successful and happen. And as I've mentioned now about 4 or 5 times, the engagement of the local sites was critical. Even though this was primarily a digital ad campaign, it would make no sense go through the expense and effort of getting individuals to sign on to your ad campaign and then send them to a local site where the site is not prepared or trained or ready to receive them properly. So having that be a component of this was essential to our success. And so then with that, then we want to emphasize that in our opinion, at least, and as far as the data we had showed, that digital recruitment, is terrific, but we do not believe that it should be proposed as a substitute for local boots on the ground recruitment efforts. It can serve as an important adjunct, but probably not a substitute. And again, that local involvement is critical for engagement and retention. So the success that we had in ADNI3 then bolstered encouragement and support that it is possible to do this kind of work, and it's possible to do it in a remarkable way, even under very challenging situations. And so, again, Mike Werner made the call with the support of NIA. So NIA is the analog of your CHR, is that correct? Yeah, right. So Mike Werner and the leadership of NIA made the call that when ADNI went in for its renewal for ADNI 4, that the diversity task force, which during this period was embedded in the admin and clinical cores of ADNI, was going to become a standalone core. And that was the first time in ADNI that any of its, 7, 8, 9 cores was going to be led by any individuals who were non-Hispanic whites, who were not non-Hispanic whites, correct? Double negatives, never mind. So Monica and I were tapped to lead the engagement core of ADNI, in ADNI 4. And then ADNI 4 then none had this mandate that of the new enrollees into ADNI 4, that at minimum 50% of those individuals are going to be from minoritized background. And they believe that this was achievable based on the success that the diversity task force had. So that success is what led them to go down this path to say we can do even better for ADNI 4. And so this is kind of a very quick schematic of what ADNI 4 is going to look like with the engagement core led by Monica and myself. So I'm just going to spend the next few minutes speaking a little bit about the engagement core and how we are positioned to do the work that we are doing. This is kind of, science jargonish kind of thing, so you can feel free to skip this. But basically, we have three aims for the engagement core. The first aim was about recruitment and engagement. So not just recruitment, but engagement. That is a very critical piece, and that was why we called ourselves the engagement core. Not the diversity core or the inclusion core, it's the engagement core. And then secondly, based on the data and our experience with the diversity task force, we realized that for the work and the success that ADNI 4 was hoping to attain to be possible, workforce training was going to be a critical piece of it. And I will speak a bit more about that later on. And then lastly then is the health disparities piece. Again, this is kind of a little bit flipping of the typical way scientists think about their work. Because typically, we want to focus on aim 3. How do we use the data to answer questions? But we're like, no, let's begin with how do we actually interact with these individuals to make them willing and interested to engage in this study in order then to make aim 3 possible? How do we train and equip the PIs and the staff at this site so that they feel confident and comfortable doing the work that we expect of them? So again, this was us continuing to implement a community-engaged research model even into the very design of the research itself. And so this is kind of a schema of the model of the engagement core. That we had 5 key pieces to what we're trying to do. The first one was about forming partnerships locally, nationally, and otherwise. And the second was, again, about the type of staff that we are going to bring on to help us execute our mandate. We also were going to continue seeing how the model of having hub sites worked very well. We were going to continue to develop and expand on that model. And then we're going to implement some community engagement research-based initiatives inside ADNI4 also. And then one of the things that we are very clear about is that we cannot expect these families, individuals to sometimes leave work to bring their loved ones to the research sites and then not receive any kind of compensation. That was going to be a key piece of this, and that this was going to be standardized across ADNI sites, which surprisingly was a tough sell to make across all of the ADNI sites, surprisingly, yes. But now I'm going to speak a little bit in detail about some 3 or 4 pieces of this paradigm. The first one is the Community Science Partnership Board. Now, this was a central piece of the work and continues to be a central piece of the work of the Engagement Core. This is not an advisory board, a focus group. It's none of those things. It's community members and scientists coming together as equals on a board to talk about the science of ADNI. I can tell you that not a single ad in ADNI4 or even during the Diversity Task Force initiative, not a single ad was seen online by anyone that had not first been vetted and approved by members of this board. And sometimes to things like even as detailed as what font size to use. Like we spend like millions, what font size, what color, what style. These were all things that community members have found either increase or decrease their willingness and interest to engage with ads. And it behooved us as the scientists to sit there and listen from them and take their requests and suggestions to heart. So this was truly a partnership between academia and folks in communities. The next piece of this then is again, our hub sites. As described earlier, the hub sites, which we had expanded to 20, kind of serve as our inner group, our closest partners in making the mandate of ADNI4 a reality. And so we continue to build on the lessons learned. But importantly, though, what we're now doing in ADNI4 is that we say, while we are working more closely with these 20 sites, the mandate of ADNI4 is for all of ADNI sites. So we provide training and support to any site that is interested and willing to partner with us, but we still have this smaller group that we kind of work on a more regular and intimate basis with. And then we did something that we hadn't found a model for it, and prior to now in academic research, and that was the establishment of the CRNs, so the Community Research Navigators. These are folks who, again, if I go back to orient you to what ADNI4's model is going to start by engaging about 30,000 individuals online before bringing them into the clinic. And so we made sure that we hired staff who were going to be available 24/7 pretty much at any time that if it's possible that somebody might be calling into these hotlines even at 11 p.m., there needs to be somebody there at that time to answer. So we hired staff and we paid them very well to be available on the phone day and night to take calls and answer questions about ADNI. Whether it's questions on what is your website address, how do I go from this part of the website to that part, how do I go from doing the online screening to going to get my blood drawn. We had this staff who were available to answer all these questions. In addition, these sites were also empowered and trained to interact with participants and the lay public on Facebook and other online forums. we get, as probably most folks here I want to assume that we believe that this kind of work is important, but there are other people who think that this is reverse and racism. Why should you be doing this? And they access our websites and they post comments. And they also deserve a response, And so we have staff trained to interact with them and try to educate and clarify why the work we are doing is important and why we are doing it the way we are doing it. This is, as far as I know, it was the first time a model like this, which we borrowed from social work in the hospital setting to bring it into academic research. And then we had the community research liaisons. Now, these are staff whom we install or insert in the hub sites, in our 20 hub sites. So each hub site gets one of these liaisons. We chose to not call them outreach staff or any of the other types of terms that you might have heard. They are liaisons to build the bridge between the ADNI site and the community in which the site is based. They form that bridge, making connections, building trust, being a face for ADNI and the site at different community events, in churches, in synagogue, mosques, whatnot. They just show up, not to ask for anything, but just to be a face for ADNI and to support the communities. So these were key pieces of the staffing changes that the engagement core did as a way to enhance the potential success of ADNI. And then, if I can show my bias, this piece of ADNI is the one that is the closest to my heart, because as I showed you on the summary slides from the Diversity Task Force, it became very clear and apparent to us that for initiatives of this sort to succeed, there is need for training of the individuals who are going to be doing the work, and to put those people in positions of leadership where they actually have a voice and feel empowered to implement what they know can be successful. And so as part of the engagement core, we have developed a program called the Health Equity Scholars Program, which is open to individuals who are either from a minoritized background or have an interest in health equity. So they sign up for this program at 3 levels, either as a grad/med student, a postdoc, or a junior faculty. And this program is, frankly, was intentionally designed to be done differently than most other programs. Again, funding is a critical piece of this, and so for the individuals who are at the junior and faculty level, for each year they are in this program, they receive a stipend of $95,000 to be in this program. And why we do that is so that they are able to buy out time from whatever other commitments their institutions might be making of them, so that they can focus on getting the training that we are providing them in this program. Then for the postdocs, it's a stipend of $70,000. For grad students, it's a stipend of $45,000. Because again, money doesn't solve every problem, clearly not. But historically, people expect this kind of work to be done, but done on a shoestring budget, and that has proved to be a disastrous failure. And so ADNI 4 made a commitment to change that. And so we provide these scholars with not just the funding, but with training and mentoring in diverse aspects of dementia research, so that they can be fully equipped to go on then to have careers like the type that Monica and I have had, and then to begin to spread this model elsewhere, because this model clearly can be learned and can be implemented by even folks who do not have prior training. How much more by folks who actually have been trained and equipped to do this? So this is, if I can show my bias, well, it's kind of really near and dear to my heart for the engagement core. And I think, I'm going to just end again by saying thank you again to Mike Weiner. I cannot commend him enough, because He did something that's even, frankly, some people who were in leadership thought that this was not the time or the right time to do this, but he believed in this work and committed funds and resources and capacity to getting it done. And again, Dr. Rivera Mains, who has been an incredible co-lead of all of this process. And I want to thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much for really inspiring. I wrote pages and pages of notes and have so many questions myself. But I want to first open it up. We have about 7 minutes. Will you be here more time? Are you staying with us? Okay, good. So there'll be time for us to all interact. But I want to start by inviting if there are members of the EPLED who have a question to start. And please make sure you ask your question into a microphone. There's 2 people walking around with microphones. Does someone have a microphone over here with the... Okay, so...
Hi, thank you. I don't really, well, I'm sure I'll have a question, but I just want to say that your presentation is the dream that I have realized. It really is, it really is. My background is in social work and community development, and yesterday I spoke, and I have a lot of dementia in my family, so often I feel like I'm covered in amyloid plaque bullseyes all over me. And I'm always frustrated by the lack of samples, like blood samples, of people like me participating in research. And I know the reason is because researchers haven't sought us out. And so that's the real reason why we're not included, because you haven't wanted to include us. So I'm so excited, and I hope, Howard, that you're paying close attention. I would love for something like this to happen here, because as we know, there's been a lot of research in dementia over the years, and it hasn't moved us very far. And maybe, quite frankly, some of the answers are in different samples like myself. So thank you.
Okay, I see a hand over here. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Sukhinder Chima. I play 2 roles. I'm a professor at Memorial University doing research on brain health, and then I'm also a member of the EPLED group. So I want to echo everything that you just said. I am so thrilled that you're doing this kind of research. I'm in Newfoundland, and originally I'm from India. So my father, who wore a turban, he got dementia, and we are in Newfoundland. And I'm reaching out to my community saying, my father got dementia. And everyone is saying, hush, hush, you should not say that word. So to see that only 1%, like you could only recruit 1%, that is what culturally diverse, whatever societies we come from, and it's a stigma attached to dementia. And I found it was the saddest thing that I went through alone. And the Newfoundlanders did not understand my culture. So dementia is one problem. And then being in Newfoundland, where no one understood my culture. So I'm so thankful to you for doing this kind of research. And this is what we want everyone to know, that I'm a researcher myself. And doing brain research, it's not till my father got dementia. It is not till that moment I realized what it meant to have lived through the experience and how critical that is for every researcher to know. I can work in the lab using test tubes, using mice, I can do whatever, I can publish papers. It meant nothing to me when my father got dementia. The research was useless because I needed to help him. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. I just want to real quick, address one of the things you raised, which I think is a very important point. Again, my heart goes out to you and your family for the pain and the loss you've experienced. You talked about stigma, and that is, a big piece of the under-inclusion of certain communities into research, because, people sometimes prefer to handle some of these things in the homes, in the families, as a family event or situation. And that is one of the reasons why we established the community research liaisons. That was one of the things that we were trying to address by having those staff individuals. These are individuals who are from the communities in which the hub site is centered. So they understand some of these dynamics, and they can speak to their communities and say, I understand that this is how we have done this, and I understand why doing it that way has worked, but let us potentially consider this other path of doing this. So that was, again, a key reason why we had those community research liaisons established, to be able to help someone like you and your dad. Thank you.
Well, I just want to again thank you so much for being here and for the questions we've had so far. And so I just want to make sure we also give people a break when we said we were going to give people a break. And so I just want to invite you now to take a break, refresh. This has opened both our minds and our hearts, so thank you so much again for that. The rest of today's sessions are on the 8th floor. So right now we're on the 11th floor, and your sessions begin back again at 11 o'clock. So you have a half an hour, take a break, and we'll see you back on the 8th floor. Okay, thank you again, Dr. Okonkwo.